All right. Well, I just got back to the hotel. It is just shortly after 6:30 that I got back. Really not that long after we just watched 100 Thieves get beaten by VKS. Just wanted to hop on real quick and give some initial thoughts since it's so fresh. Um, Initial thought, first of all, congratulations to VKS on beating 100 Thieves. That was a well-deserved win. They played really well. As much as I was talking about, VKS wasn't really going to beat 100 Thieves or beat a North American team sort of in this playoffs in the finals, which I fully expected this to happen, and I still fully expect them to lose to FlyQuest tomorrow. They surprised me. They managed to beat 100 Thieves, and I'm not going to take away from their win. They did a really good job and playing to their win condition and to playing to their strengths. But I do feel to some degree they were helped by 100 Thieves not playing particularly well, particularly in games 1 and 2. The really kind of biggest defenders there for me are Dokla and FBI in those first 2 games. There seemed to be a disconnect on what they wanted to do team fight wise, and some of these little moments where they're not positioned correctly. FBI and Dokla seem to be split a little bit from the rest of the team in a way that I don't really understand. And so that led to them kind of getting picked off a couple of times. They had some weird fights, like they forced tempo a couple of times in some of the dragon fights in both games 1 and 2, and then obviously they got greedy in game 4, where they were mounting the comeback. It was on, and then they just greeted for Baron, and they should have just taken a reset. They should have just waited. There's no reason to go for Baron in that moment, and I think that ultimately they're going to look back at that and wish that they had been a little bit more patient. So disappointing for them to go out on that note when they could have had a game 5 if they had just been, I think, a little bit more patient, waited. Their items, they were starting to finally really ramp up in damage. FBI was finishing all the items that he needed on Jin. Quid was really starting to become a problem. Finishing all the items that he needed on Yone, and then obviously Doko the top lane. Akali was really getting good access in the back line and assassinating the targets that he needed to. It just obviously Rise was becoming a little bit tankier, as was the other members of the VKS squad. The items that they were building, particularly having trouble trying to kill the Trundle, especially in that latter half of the game. And so I think that they're going to look back at that and wish they had been a little bit more patient. But ultimately, other than that, I think just the other 2 games, I think, will haunt them. And I think 100 Thieves probably should have won that series, but didn't, because they just didn't play well. And ultimately, at the end of the day, woulda, coulda, shoulda, almost only counts on horseshoes and hand grenades. The fact is they didn't play well in those first 2 games. And so, ultimately, if you allow that kind of opening, eventually someone's going to take advantage of it, and that's exactly what VKS did. So congratulations to them. Well done. It's hard to be upset at their results. I didn't necessarily have a dog in this fight other than wanting 100 Thieves to go out on a good note, which is a little sour that they won't be able to complete the latter half of their North American run before they sail off into the sunset. Of course, they still have World. That's going to be, to them, probably feel like a consolation prize. So, fully expecting FlyQuest to beat VKS tomorrow, but you never know. Things happen. This game is weird. They weren't supposed to beat 100 Thieves today, and they did. So, hopefully we get some really good games. Hopefully I don't know, I'd like to see 3-1. I don't want a clean 3-0 sweep. I'd like to see 3-1, but, maybe I'm lucky. Maybe we get 5 games. But I think the most likely outcome is that we get a 3-0 from FlyQuest. They've just been in a league of their own from the entirety of this year. They've, especially this latter half of the year, where they've really proved, how strong they are as a team. So, looking forward to that. Sad for 100 Thieves again to go out on this note. I know that they'll be disappointed, but I think ultimately they can hold their heads high. They've comported themselves well, and they've performed, I think, admirably, and I think that overall the organization has a lot to look back on fondly. With their stay in the LCS and then the LTA. And I think that their legacy is cemented. Is it as glorious as it could have been? Is it as high as other comparable organizations? No, because they didn't have the same amount of time, and they didn't have quite the same level of success. But they were a very successful organization. For them to do what they did, is incredible. And their championships will be remembered for a long time. So, yeah. Other than that. It was exciting today. The arena was in good shape. There was a lot of people there, which is really refreshing. There weren't really a whole lot of empty seats, and tomorrow will be better. So it was pretty packed. Everyone seemed to be very excited. The content I'll be making soon about the interviews that I did today, that will be exciting as well. I got a lot of different opinions about the LTA. Some of them I wasn't expecting, some of them I were. There were some interesting perspectives on some of the things that Riot could be doing that some people had. One thing I noticed is it's a lot of longtime fans that are at this event, which makes sense. That's pretty stock standard for that sort of thing to happen. Or for that sort of thing to be true. So a lot of people have been watching since like 2013, 2014. A lot of people since like 17, 18. A few people have been watching since like just prior to COVID or just like at the COVID era, like 2021. So that was nice to hear that we're still drawing in new fans. There wasn't anybody I think that has been watching like within the last year that started, other than a couple of new fans that didn't necessarily want to be on camera, which is totally fine. But it's good to see that we are still drawing some level of new viewership, but I think there's a lot of things that we could be doing to fix that. And it'll be interesting to see whether or not Riot announces soon again, or confirms or denies the rumor as far as the the LTA resplitting. Right now, my understanding is that they're not going to, and my understanding is that it's not true yet. So, but it remains to be seen. So we'll see. We'll see how that develops within the next remainder of this year. If I was a betting man, I'd say they probably aren't going to, but I'd love to be wrong. So anyways, that's all from me right now. I'll have other videos coming up soon, again, with the interviews that I'm doing. It'll be cool to kind of share a lot of the thoughts and feelings that other people have had, and I hope that you guys are looking forward to that too. So, but until then, I will see you guys later. I will be recording stuff for tomorrow for championships for FlyQuest versus VKS, which will be, I think, very interesting, and probably a lot of people didn't expect that. So that'll be a lot of fun to record. Anyways, I will see you next time. Bye.